Okay. That, and we've got purple, and I think we're going to add in blue as well. All right. Here we go. Hey, Renee, how are ya? It's good to see ya. I got the best description today. My friend Autumn, my new friend Autumn, commented and she said, "Today's tutorial's topic must be a surprise. I'm so excited." And my response was, yeah, surprise. That sounds much better than poor planning on my part. But you know what? I feel like if we just kind of go back to basics and we go through, spacing and laying out a project and the different techniques again, I'd like to spend some more time on swoops with you guys. So that's what we're going to do today. Hey, Barb. I'm doing good, Renee. Thank you. I've had a good morning so far. I feel like it's gone by super fast, but it's been a good morning. How about you? How is everybody doing? Is everybody doing all right? Hey, Sharon, how you doing? Everybody staying warm wherever you are? I hope so. It is cold here, but I'm certainly not going to complain because I know we have people from Winnipeg on the phone, and we'll probably have some people from out west on the call too. Hey, Autumn. I love your description. Autumn is the one that said, "Today's tutorial must be a surprise." I'm like, yes, that's a much better description than I didn't plan very well this time. But that's okay, because we're going to go through. I've got this canvas that I had started. We're not going to go through these circles around the outside, but I am going to start in the middle here, and we're going to work out and we're going to practice again spacing. We're going to talk about these guidelines, what I usually do with those, and we're going to just start to kind of, again, go over the basics of what are the things that you want to be looking for. The first thing I'm going to start with actually is I am going to just redo this dot. The reason for that is because it had a little bit of a crack in it from when it dried earlier. So I'm just going to put that on there to just make it look a little bit pretty. Life is what happens. It totally, right? It's one of those crazy, crazy things where life just happens and it runs away with you. And then you go, oh, wait, I was supposed to make a decision on this. But that's the beautiful thing about mandalas. And you know what, to be brutally honest, it's kind of the way that I function an awful lot when it comes to painting mandalas. I don't typically do a ton of planning. I just jump right in. So we've spent some time on a previous tutorial kind of going over my thought process on how I plan these projects. So let's even just talk about this. This is a partially started project that I had. How big is this canvas? I want to say it's 8 inches. Let's get the tape measure and see. Yeah, it's an 8-inch circle. I got this round canvas actually at Dollar Tree. And what we had done with this one before was we had talked about creating these concentric circles all the way around the outside. And you know what? Maybe we'll do that again today too. We'll create a concentric circle right in the middle there and see how that looks once we get going a little bit. So we'll kind of talk about that, and we'll talk about, again, the guidelines and getting everything ready to go. So I'm really glad you guys are here. I'm glad you've come to hang out with me for a couple hours. And if you're painting along with me, or even if you just have questions as we go through everything, please let me know. I use a toothpick here to pop bubbles in the paint as that comes up. Now, there's one thing I want to talk to you about with canvas, okay? Canvas is very bumpy because of the threads and everything and the fabric in them. So there's a couple different ways that you can prep them. One is to put multiple coats of paint for a base coat. Hey, Jan. You can also use gesso. I'll show you what it looks like. I use the Liquitex gesso when I use it. My problem is I'm usually too anxious. I get jumping into a project and then go, oh crap, I was supposed to prep the canvas and then I didn't do it. The reason it's nice to prep these canvases is because the fabric and the texture in the fabric of the canvas can cause distortion in the shape of your dots. So it's one of the beautiful things about painting on stone, or even especially molded stone, hand cast stone, and painting on wood, is it's typically a lot smoother. So we're just going to kind of deal with this today. You know, it's not a super fancy canvas with great fabric, so it's relatively smooth, but we're still going to get these little imperfections in there. When you get up super close, you can see some of those imperfections, but I'm also a big fan of saying, you know what, if we have imperfections, that's totally okay. It's how we know that it's handmade. It's how we know we created it. So when I'm starting off a new canvas, I will use guidelines. I will almost always put some guidelines down. How many and what kinds are completely a different story. So with this particular one, the reason I created all of these cross guidelines is so that I could create these circles in the middle and use these guidelines to help me with my spacing. So when it comes to actually building a mandala now, if I wanted to just keep going in here, I could work from the outside in, or I could start in the center and work my way out. The hard part with half-finished projects, and this is something I run into all the time, is I don't record anywhere what colors I was using. Did they come straight out of a bottle? Did I custom mix something? So it's definitely something to keep in the back of your head if you are someone like me who will have multiple projects on the go at any given time. I have multiple things on the go just because sometimes I need to let things sit and dry for a little bit before I continue on, and that's totally okay. It's all up to you. Now, one thing, you know, I'm never going to lie to you and tell you that I'm going to tell you all of the best ways to do things, because I screw up all the time. Even in this, I screwed up by laying that center dot down again when I didn't add any more guidelines in. And I want to add in a couple of circles that go all the way through. So here's the thing though, is yes, there are things that you could do that can make your life easier if you prep things in an order that makes sense. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to stick my compass into the center of this dot, kind of where I think the center is, and then I'll just fill it in with more paint, and that's going to be okay. So I'm just going to spin that around and create a couple of these circles. I'm going to create a couple more, just kind of out a little bit further, and then we're going to come up with a couple ideas on how to fill this in. What I'd like to do today is really talk to you about spacing, ways to kind of keep your spacing fairly accurate and fairly symmetrical. And then we'll go through the 3 basic types of patterns that I typically rotate through. Hey Jen, how you doing? It's good to see you guys. Thanks for hopping on. Now, I've gotten some great suggestions for upcoming tutorials as well. Like, Sharon, thank goodness, you gave me some incredible ideas that we're definitely going to add in. And I am going to I've blocked off time on my calendar already this week to sit down in front of the computer, which is kind of the bane of my existence. You know, I hate sitting down in front of the computer because when I'm sitting down in front of the computer, I'm not painting and it drives me crazy. But I have scheduled some time in that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to schedule some upcoming tutorials and put some of these great ideas into play. That being said, I'm also going to be creating a Facebook group, and that's going to be a spot where these tutorials are going to be, but it's also going to be a place where if you feel like sharing your work or asking questions about a current project you're working on, or sharing cool ideas, or even putting in requests for future tutorials, I figured that would be a really good spot to kind of go for. But if you have suggestions on things that you would like to see in upcoming tutorials, please don't hesitate to send me a message and let me know what you would like to see, okay? Jen Cousins, been painting up a storm this week. Fantastic. That's awesome. Yay. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Shauna, hello. I am so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. So it's so funny, right? Because I don't necessarily do things the right way, right? Let's get the air quotes in there. I do the things, I've kind of figured a lot of things out on my own. Things that I haven't been able to figure out on my own, I will just do a ton of Googling, a ton of searches on Pinterest, devour some YouTube content. That's how I learned how to do this. Lydia May is actually the person that I learned from the most. I also learned from Jessie D Designs, all kinds of great creators. But Lydia May is whose tutorials I just devoured probably hundreds of hours at the very beginning of my journey here. Now, the other kind of cool thing is February 11th was my exact 2-year anniversary from when I started creating mandalas. That's when I started with drawing mandalas, and not too long after that, I moved over into painting. Really kind of haven't looked back since. But so devouring a lot of that content is going to give you a lot of information. It's going to give you a lot of ideas, but always remember that your hands are different than the person in the video. So your hands are different than mine. You move differently than I do. You breathe differently than I do. So do your best to try and let go of trying to recreate something exactly as you see it, and use it as inspiration and let yourself really flow into that painting, right? You want you to come out in these paintings. We want to see you, because who you are and what you're adding to this is what makes your piece of artwork unique, even if it's a design from somebody else. And here's the one thing that I take a lot of strength in, I take a lot of solace in, is that I am literally the only me on this planet. Out of the millions and millions of people on this planet, I'm the only one who's me. Nobody else can do anything that I do exactly the way that I do it. So even if you are doing something that is not unique to you as far as design, if you're using a template, if you're doing anything else, you're still the only you out there. So you want to try and, if possible, to let yourself shine through on the pieces that you're creating. And you'll start to develop almost habits of your go-to patterns that you do, your go-to colors that you do. You could take one single design. So for example, you could take one single design like this heart, and you could just completely continue to do just this pattern and this design in probably what would feel like an unlimited and infinite number of color patterns, right? And it would look different every single time. So for example, here is a second one that I did in pretty much the same color pattern. Let me move this so I can set these down, right? Pretty much the same pattern, but I didn't use the exact same tools. I didn't use the exact same center dot size. The paints behave differently, so they're going to create different size dots. There are unlimited options, even if you just want to get comfortable with one particular pattern, one particular design, and just practice the hell out of it. That's when you're going to start to figure out what is that unique thing that you bring to it, and where are the things that you want to change. There are no rules. You can do anything you want to do with this, right? It's, I work with a coach. He's based out of Australia. And the thing that he said to me that has changed my life in the last couple of months is he said to me, he said, people always talk about, well, if you could do it any way you want, how would you do it? He goes, I hate that question. He said, my question is, since you can do it any way you want to, how do you want to do it? So every time I start to get stressed out about how do I want to move forward, what do I want to do next, all of those different things, as soon as I start to feel that anxiety, I stop and I just say, nope, I can do this any way I want. And since I can do this any way I want, how do I want to do it? And then it's very, very easy to make decisions from that place. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that's helpful. So even as we go through these tutorials, I want to be able to give you pieces of advice that you can kind of put onto anything that you create. And just remember, you're the only you. So when I put these guidelines down, what I'll typically do is go over them with an eraser, nice and light like I do, because anytime you lay down lines, they're going to leave a little bit of buildup on the surface, right? And any kind of buildup could potentially impact the shape of your dots, okay? So when you just want to kind of go over it with a really, really light eraser, because we still want to see the guidelines. We just don't want any of that pencil to be left there. And see, I did it again. I did this while I still have a wet center dot. So now I'm going to go in with a paintbrush, or actually I'm going to tap this off as best as I can and blow it away from the center dot. What I should call my tutorials is learn from my mistakes. Excuse me, look at all of the dumb, unproductive stuff that I do to make my life more difficult, and try not to do those things. But that's okay, because we deal, and it's all right. The worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get some eraser shavings in the middle. It's going to mess up the center dot. I can sand it down, do it all over again, and start again. That's the worst thing that's going to happen, right? Yes, since I can do this any way I want, and it applies to all of your life. Since I can do this any way I want, and it lets you realize that you've got some control, right? Even when external circumstances make it feel like your choices are taken away, I still have the choice on how I want to emotionally handle it, and how do I want things to be different. Even if I don't quite have the tools in my toolbox yet to make it different, that's okay. If I can at least be really clear on how I want to do it, then I can start looking for ways to help me do things the way that I want to do them. It's completely changed my life, especially with my business, because, you know, there's so much advice out there saying you should do it this way, you should do it that way, you need to do this, you need to do that. And so much of it, I'm like, I don't want to do that. That is not part of what I want to do at all. So, all right, that's the end of my TED Talk. Thank you for coming. Let's get into some painting, and I'm going to take a drink. Okay, so this was an old canvas, like I said, that I had done to show how I do the spacing on these lines. So why don't we start with that first? I'm going to pick one of my colors. I had started off with the orange and the red and the teal, but I think I'm going to add in blue and purple as well. So I'm going to pick one of these colors. I'm going to pick the blue, because this is my favorite blue. This blue is Deco Art Americana, Deco Art Crafters acrylic. I get this at Dollarama. It's my favorite blue on the planet that I've found so far. So this is regular acrylic paints. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? And it's still, the camera never does it justice, right? It's just so, it's almost a fluorescent blue, and I just freaking love it. So this is regular acrylic paints. If you've been seeing any of my videos of doing the mugs, those are multi-surface acrylic paints, and they're specifically designed for painting on things like metal, wood, metal, glass, ceramics, that sort of thing. Those particular paints are necessary if you're going to paint on something like a ceramic mug, because you need to be able to bake them to cure them. They will cure after you let them sit and dry for 21 days, but I don't have that kind of patience. I don't have that kind of time in my mind. So, but when you're doing canvas, when I do my stones, when I do pretty much anything else, I do use just regular craft acrylic paints. So what I'm going to start with is I'm actually going to go to right about here, this particular guideline here that's in the middle. Okay. And I'm going to start adding in a row of dots like this. So I'm going to pull the camera back a little bit, and I'm going to show you how I do this. And I'm actually going to grab my Lazy Susan. Where is my Lazy Susan? There it is. If you can get your hands on a Lazy Susan, it's going to be a game changer, especially if you are working on larger canvas pieces. I paint my Lazy Susan teal. Every once in a while, I'll go in and I'll paint a whole bunch. I'll paint it over just to make it look pretty again. I got this one at Canadian Tire for $13. So you can always try and find some of that stuff. Let's see here. I think that would be absolutely beautiful, Autumn. I saved up and got the big pack of DIY Mandala stones. Yay! So let's talk about the tools then for a minute. That's a really great segue, Autumn. Thank you. So I want to be able to give you some advice on what I wish I had done or knew before I started using them. Number one is try your best to keep them as clean as possible. If you let paint build up on the outside of them, they are going to impact the shape and size of your dots. And that includes if you get paint build up on the ends. You can sit and scrape it off. However, you're always risking damaging the ends of these. And the last thing you want is for this beautiful, perfect circle to get any chips or dips in it. So, chips and dip. I'm hungry, apparently. So anyways, the way to clean these is never use anything that's abrasive, and don't use things like acetone or alcohol or anything like that. The way that the lady who makes these recommends that you clean these is just with some warm soapy water and a non-abrasive, so just a nice soft cloth. Let them soak for about 10-15 minutes, then wipe them down, and if it doesn't work, keep repeating the process until you get them clean. One of the biggest mistakes that I typically will make with my tools is that I don't keep a wet, damp face cloth next to me all the time. Sometimes I keep a dry one, and it just doesn't clean them as nicely. And there's some satisfaction to having nice, clean tools too. So making sure that you have a damp cloth beside you to clean off your tools is going to help you prolong the life of them. Okay? All right, so let's get started here. So if I'm going to create a large concentric circle here, but I'm going to do it in the middle of my canvas, that's where these guidelines that bi and trisect this whole thing are going to be really, really important. Because this is what I do for my spacing, okay? This is how I get my spacing the way that I want it to be. So the first thing that I do is I start off by dotting at the North Pole, or 12 o'clock on your clock. Right? So I'm dotting it here so that it is almost perfectly half and half on this guideline and almost perfectly half and half on this line. You can set it so that you're resting the edge of the dot on the line. You can have it so you're resting the edge just below the line. It's totally up to you. But I do this, and I used to call it the clock method. You can call it the compass method, whatever you want. And then I spin it around, and then I dot straight across it again at 12 o'clock again. Okay, this is how I'm going to start off with all of my spacing. If I'm doing a row of tiny dots around the center, this is also how I do it, okay? This is how I get my spacing the way that I want it to be. So then I turn it again, and then back to 12 o'clock, and then again at 12 o'clock. Perfect world scenario, you want to be cleaning off your tools every few dots. If you're doing a lot of walking dots and you get into some tinier detail, you'll probably have to clean it off a little bit more. Hey Rex, how you doing? So now that I've got the north, south, east, and west poles, now I'm going to turn it so that I have this center section here, and I'm going to do the north pole again. So doing the north pole again here is essentially just literally dividing this space in half. And if you're constantly dividing spaces in half, then that's going to help with your spacing to help it be nice and even all the way around. So I just keep going and dot at 12 o'clock. I always dot across from me because that's where I tend to get the straightest lines. If I was to dot down here, closer to me, I tend to always lean. We all tend to do this. We all tend to lean one side or the other a little bit. So dotting across from me helps me keep a much straighter line, especially when I get to this one, because I can draw a nice line across with my hand and then place my dot. And then we're just going to keep repeating this process of dividing these sections in half. Okay. So let's see here. So now, even if you don't have these guidelines drawn, you can still do this, because as long as I have these circles, then I can eyeball it and say about halfway between those two dots is right here. And we're just going to keep repeating this process all the way around until we've divided all of those sections in half. I don't have any music on. That's why it sounds so quiet. I knew something felt different. So we're just continuing to divide these sections in half. So as long as you draw a circle, you could do this on a piece of paper and draw a circle and just divide it up and be constantly dividing those sections in half. Okay. I hope this is making sense, but let me know if you have any questions. Had to blow a dog hair off of there. Okay, so now we get down to this spot where it's getting a little bit tighter. So I have a decision to make here. If I do a single dot here in the middle, and I'll show you, if I do a single dot here, dividing that section in half, I now don't have space to put another dot in between there, right? It's too tight of a space. So my option then is to put in 2. So this is a little bit more eyeballing than anything. So I'm going to just put the 2 in the middle instead. And then I get a closer group of dots. Don't be afraid to test things out and see how they fit. Again, the worst thing that's going to happen is that you have to wipe off something that you don't like. I'm using these dotting tools. You can get these in the clay section. They have a dotting tool, so the little different size balls on the end, but they have these silicone brushes on the end. I freaking love these. I used to do work with polymer clay, and that's why I had these, and I didn't realize how helpful those silicone brushes were actually going to be for me. So I just have to find a paintbrush. And let me grab a paintbrush here. Grab one. So once you wipe off what you want to cover up or what you don't want to be there, or a mistake, if they smudge together, if your dots bleed together, all of that sort of stuff. You wipe them off, and then you just go in with a little bit of black paint on a paintbrush, paint over it. And then by the time I finish dotting all the way around here, that one, and I'll cover up a couple of these little splatter dots that I've got, that one will probably be dry. So then I can go back in and fix it right up. Thank you for the tips on keeping the tools in good condition. I also got some of the silicone ended. Yay! Yes, you totally can. I love these things. If I didn't have these, screwing around with Q-tips or anything like that, royal pain in the butt in my mind. I don't buy super fancy Q-tips, so I end up getting the fluff from the Q-tips into the paint and onto the canvas and can't get it off, or I don't get the precision that I like. I really, really like these. Really, really like these. All right, so I'm going to close up my black paint. This is another reason why I tend to use a lot of black backgrounds. A lot of you have heard me say this before, but it's because it's very forgiving. I can go back in, even if these lines didn't erase, I could technically go back in with a really tiny paintbrush and touch up all of the spaces if the lines don't erase properly. It's very, very forgiving. So let's get back down here closer. I apologize for the glare, you guys. Hopefully you can still see this okay. I'm just going to start making our way around the canvas. And they're not all going to be perfect, and that's okay. Just keep an eye for where your guidelines are. This is where it's important to kind of erase part of the guidelines, but not all of it. If I had left really thick guidelines on here, what would have happened is these dots would pinch in on the sides. So let me see if I can show you what I mean. So if I had placed that dot there and it was a super thick line, what would have actually happened is everywhere it crossed a line, it would actually pinch in, almost like a little egg shape. That didn't work at all the way I was hoping it to, but it will actually pinch in the dot and keep it from being round, and it will pinch exactly where they intersect with the line. Yeah, the Lazy Susan can be really, really, really helpful. If you're painting smaller stones, or smaller pieces, smaller anything, a Lazy Susan might be a little bit much. So I go to Dollar Tree and in the craft section, sorry, that was really, really close. I go to the craft section and I actually pick up these little round sponges, and these are really nice for stones because this spins nicely on my table, and then it's a nice way to kind of prop things up. Now, that being said, Jessie D Designs and Lydia May at Dot Art Depot, they both sell Lazy Susans that are smaller. So if you want a small Lazy Susan for stones and such, then you can definitely do that. But again, this large one, I got it at Canadian Tire for about $13. Okay, I love Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree's fantastic. They've got so much cool stuff. I also buy my little paint pots there. So these little paint pots that you might see me using with the little plastic lids, I get them at Dollar Tree as well. You get a pack of 8 or 10 of them for $1.25, I believe. I also will buy the ones that come in the big strip like this, and I actually just cut them apart. So then I've got a whole bunch of these little tiny paint pots sitting all over my desk with different colors. And the size really just depends on how big of a project you're working on, how much, especially if you're mixing custom colors, how much do you need to mix to have enough. But I find them really, really helpful. Some dot artists will dot right out of the lid of their paint jar. I don't really like doing that because I find that it gets the jars, the lids of the jars, or the bottles rather, it usually gets them really gummy. And I'm not a big fan of that. When the lids of my jars get gummy and full of gunk and dried up crusty paint, inevitably some of that is going to fall into the bottle with the rest of the paint, and then I'm dealing with chunks in my paint, right? All of these paints are not created equal. If you're going to use heavy body acrylic paints like your Liquitex Basics, or even getting into some of the fancier paints that are out there, you want to invest in some pouring medium so that you can thin them down, because if they're super thick, they are not going to give you nice dots. You want them to be a little bit thinner. That's why craft paints are typically a really good consistency. Now, if they're too watery, you can also get what's called a gel medium, and that will actually help to thicken your paints a little bit. I have never used that. I've also heard that cornstarch is an option, but I haven't tried any of that. I've just dealt with it. Because what will happen is you want to get to know your paints and you want to get to know your tools. So you might have some paints that are a little waterier. So maybe, the same size tool is going to give you multiple different sizes of dots depending on the wateriness of your paint. So test your paints out. Pick a favorite size. I've seen some people actually create a canvas where that's their test canvas, and they actually write underneath it and say, this is this particular paint, this color with this size tool, and they use the same size tool for the whole canvas so they can see how the paints will impact the size of the dots. Lots and lots of different tricks out there. I actually saw, and it looks like a really fun project, I saw someone take a bunch of popsicle sticks, and they actually painted swatches, almost like painter swatches, so that they could move these different popsicle sticks around and match up colors and see what they looked like dry. So you could totally do that too. If you think you're going to be painting on black all the time or most of the time, you could paint those popsicle sticks black and then dot on top of it, right? There's lots of colors that I've had that look really nice in the bottle, but when I put them on black paint, they just don't stand out the way I want them to. Maybe they're a little too dark, they blend into the background. So lots of different ideas on things you could do there. Oh, I'm glad that's helpful, Shauna. Wonderful. Yay. All right. Oh, you're most welcome. So we're going to keep going. And now we have a circle all the way around, right? So that dividing and following those guidelines and then dividing each section in half is how you can deal with your spacing around there to get it nice and even all the way around. And you don't have to try and guess, is this tool going to work? Like if I started here and just started dotting all the way around, I can totally do that. However, there's a big chance that when I get back around to the beginning, I'm either going to have too much space or not enough space to fit in another dot. And then I'm going to immediately go to myself and say, you choose the wrong size tool. No, I didn't. I just didn't do my spacing the way that is going to work the best for this size tool on this size circle, right? So always kind of check that out and see how you can make it work for yourself. I hope that helps. Exactly. No white or black is ever the same. Totally. You're never going to get the same. So checking and creating those swatches might be something really helpful for you. And it might just be a really fun project to sit and paint a bunch of popsicle sticks all day. I've thought about that a couple times. I'm like, yeah, I don't have time. I don't have this. I'm like, but you know what? It sounds like fun. So you know what? If it sounds like fun, freaking do it. Just do it. Have some fun. Oh, no, you don't have a good internet connection, Rex? Oh, that sucks. Well, I'm glad you're here and trying to be here. Thanks for putting up with that. All right, let's get started and start going in around the circle. So the same technique that I used around here, dotting at 12 o'clock, is what I'm going to do here to create my center dot, my center ring of dots. I always do a ring of dots around the center. And actually, here's another thing that we can talk about here. So when you're creating your ring of dots around the center dot, let's go back to these hearts for a minute. So with this heart, you can see that all of these dots are super tight today. Your internet is bad as well, Renee? I hope. I'm just checking my connection. It says I have a good connection, but hopefully. Oh, well, I'm glad you're trying, Rex, and I hope it doesn't get too frustrating, but I totally get it if it does. So when I'm doing this center ring of dots, this one here, for example, they all are nice and tightly packed in there together. Now, this one, I left space so I could put these little tiny gold dot details in there. So you have a choice when you're going around that center dot. Do I want them tight and spaced a little bit so that I can put in some of those details in the middle? Or do I want them nice and tightly packed in? Missy, it's good for you? Okay, that's good to hear. Oh, you've got bad weather, Rex? Oh, that's right, too. Are you staying warm? Are you okay? Have you got power? She's in Texas, folks, and she's been having some bad weather. They've been having snow and ice and all kinds of stuff there. So I hope that you're okay, Rex. So I'm going to keep going with this because, as you can see in my row here, they're all nice and tightly packed together. I'm going to keep that pattern going with this one. Okay? So I've made that decision that I'm going to do nice tightly packed dots, and to do that I'm going to choose a fairly small dotting tool. So I'm going to do this with my DIY mandala stones. They come from a size of 1 millimeter. I'm not going to get that in focus, am I? They come from a size of 1 millimeter all the way up to a 28 millimeter and everything in between. So it's really nice to be able to kind of use these different sizes to work your way out or back. Good, you're safe and warm. I'm really glad to hear that. So glad to hear that. All right. So I'm going to go with the pink next. Minus 40 to minus 50 here this week. Oh my gosh. Whereabouts are you, Jen? All right, so I'm starting with my 1 millimeter, but I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did before. And I'm going to dot at 12 o'clock and then keep spinning it around. Now, here is a tip as well. Don't do as I do because I make life difficult. This row here is wet. I'm trying to now reach over top of this row to not stick my hand in that blue paint. So try and be strategic about that, or be prepared to set your piece aside for a little while so that you can then come back to it once it's dry. There's going to be rolling blackouts to prevent a grid crash. Oh, well, I hope that you're okay. I hope it's not going to be for too long. Oh, you're in Alberta. I should have known that when you said minus 40 to 50. Should have either guessed Alberta or Winnipeg. Either one of them would have been a safe bet. So bear with me 1 second. I just got to get my hair out of my eyes here. Thankfully, I've got bobby pins in every corner of this house for myself. My little stashes of bobby pins. All right, there we go. All right, that's much better. So now I'm going to go back in with my 1 millimeter again. And then when I'm doing really tiny dots like this, I am going to be cleaning off the tool after every dot. The other thing that's going to make a difference with these tools as well, if you're using these or something similar, or any dotting tools really, the amount of paint that you put on the tool is going to have an impact on dot size, and how long you hold that tool down onto the canvas is also going to impact dot size. But again, this way to do the spacing I've found is the easiest way for me to help me get my spacing accurate. So I don't even always pay attention to the grid lines that are there. Once I've got my 4 poles in there, I just keep going. And I just divide them in half with my eyeball, even if it means I'm not going to use those grid lines after a bit. So let's go back in here. Once you get comfortable, you'll get to know how to you know, push your tool down to the surface, and if you don't clean off your tool, but you have a much better chance of not having differing size dots if you clean off your tool after each dot. Forecast is for -1 day next week, -1 one day next week. Texas, no, that's the hard part, right? When you're in an area where you're not prepared for it, you don't have the infrastructure set up for it, right? So there we go. And I'm going to have just enough space to put another dot in there in the middle. Just enough. You don't have to leave it as tight as I did here. So now I'm going to start just filling this in. The other thing that's really important when it comes to doing dot mandalas or dot painting of any kind is let go of the idea of perfection. You're going to make mistakes, and if you're constantly fixing and wiping things out and starting over, it is going to end up being more frustrating for you than enjoyable. So try and let yourself let go of that perfection a little bit and just keep going. Because what I've found is so many times things that were driving me crazy at the very beginning of a painting, by the time I get to the end, I don't even know where that mistake or that imperfection was. I can't even find it half the time. So kind of use a bit of a gauge to see how you want to do it and when you want to do your fixes. Like even that, it's not perfect, but that's okay. Because by the time I get to the outer edge, I'm really not going to notice it that much. With 15 to 30 minutes each every 3 to 4 hours. Well, that's not too bad at least. What brand of paints is the pink and blue? So the pink is a combination of about 3 or 4 different paints. I used some Craft Smart, I used some folk art and some deco art. I kind of created this color. The blue is Deco Art Crafters Acrylic. I had some, let me see if I can find the pink that I used. I think it was this one, Deco Art Crafters Acrylic, in this Tutti Frutti pink, which is kind of a dusty pink. And then I added some neon pink Craft Smart to it. My family just outside of Houston in the Woodlands. Oh my gosh. That's got to be scary when weather happens in an area that you're not used to that kind of weather, right? Like here, we're so used to it. We prepare for it every year. We expect it. It would be odd for us not to get that kind of weather here. But in Texas, you certainly would not be expecting it. That's for sure. Slowly filling this in. And this is going to give me the base to work from going forward and building the rest of my design. And again, it's not perfect, right? There are dots of different sizes in here, but it's okay because once I get going, not even going to be able to tell. Not even going to see it. And the worst thing that's going to happen here is that I decide I don't like it, and I can go in and I could wipe it all out if I wanted to. If I wanted to start over right now, I could go in with a tiny paintbrush and I could wipe out all of those pink dots, paint over them, and jump right back in. Prepared with extra batteries, candles, backup. Good. I'm glad. I'm really, really glad that you're home safe and warm and you're good and prepared. That's wonderful news. So now I'm going to go in with the orange and I'm going to do another row. I'm actually, because I found that I actually had to make some significantly smaller dots here, I'm actually going to go in with the same size tool and do a row of orange around here. And I'm going to be putting these, so in the equivalent down here, I'm going to be putting them in the space between the 2 dots. Just like these pink and orange ones, or the pink is in the space of the orange and vice versa. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to do for my spacing here. Now I'm going to back this up a little bit because if I don't, the camera's just going to continue to focus on my hand every time it comes into frame. And we'll keep going. So I'm just going to pick one of these spaces. And then this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to do every other dot. See how they're just slightly bigger than the row before, but I'm still doing every other one because I'm not going to rely on these spaces, these little dips in between the dots, to be perfectly spaced. I'm much more concerned about making sure that I create some good spacing on my own. So what I'm going to do is I'm doing every other one. And then when I go in to place the ones in between, I can be more focused on getting it right in between those two dots that I already did, as opposed to making it match perfectly into that dip. I hope that makes sense. So I always do 2 or 3 of these rings around the center before I start any other design. So before I start adding in some petals or anything, this is a nice base to kind of go in and create, yeah, just a base really. And there we go. And that one's a little tight, but that's okay. And that one's going to run into each other. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe those 3 little dots off. Just like that. It looks like I'm making more of a mess, but I'm thinning that paint out enough so that I can actually get in there. Now, because these are really tiny, what I'm actually probably going to do is I'm going to see... Actually, no, this one might work. I'm just going to clean my brush here and dry it off. And then I'm going to go back in with my black paint and cover that over. These first couple of rows tend to be where if I'm going to kind of redo things, this is where these redos tend to happen. And just go nice and slow. There we go. Lots of friends in Houston. It's about 5 hours south. I mean, yeah, I can deal with the rolling blackouts. Yeah, grid crash would be catastrophic, right? So rolling blackouts are definitely the better alternative, for sure. I'm glad you're good and prepared. I'm not surprised at all that you're good and prepared. So I'm going to go in here. And again, I'm going to go every other one. Oops, just put my finger in the blue paint. And I'm just going to keep going around. Cleaning off my tool again. I'm usually doing 2 or 3 dots before cleaning off my tool. I know that that's impacting the size of my dots. Again, it's all about how much you want to care about that and how much you can kind of compensate for it based on how heavy you put the tool down on the surface, right? So it's definitely not that I don't care. It's just that, is it worth going in to fix? Is it going to cause that much? The one thing that drives me really, really nuts is when my dots bleed together. That's almost always a guarantee of something that I'm going to wipe something out and go fix it, because that drives me crazy. Because I feel like I would see that again later. So we're going to do one more row after this. There we go. The Lazy Susan really makes a big difference. So I'm doing every other one and then filling in those spaces. There we go. So I'm going to skip over that spot that I painted over because it's still wet, but we will come back to that. And I'm going to choose my next color, which is going to be purple. So I'm going to do one more of these rows. So this is where I was talking about. Doing this whole repeating pattern is how I made this heartstone. Just kept going until the edges, took it around the sides. You can just keep going and going and going, okay? This is a great pattern to practice over and over and over again for spacing. It's a great pattern to play around with color and do different color grades and different mixtures and different details and everything. It's probably the one pattern that if I was going to tell you to do one thing, it would be to practice that pattern. So now slightly bigger again. Purple's not going to show up too great because it is, and I just ran that together. Poop. Let's try again here. One more time. And this is just the reality of it, right? This is just the reality of it. This is the way it goes. You paint a few things, you get a couple of setbacks, and you just keep going. The key is enjoying it. If you get to the point where you're frustrated, it's better to walk away and give yourself a break than it is to force yourself to keep going. Because if you're frustrated, if you're not enjoying the process, or if you're rushing, that is going to increase the likelihood of making even more mistakes. Okay. So let's go back in here. I'm just going to make them slightly larger. Not too much larger, because I'm okay with there being some space in between them all. And I'm going to make sure I'm cleaning off my tool a little bit more too. And that'll help me with my consistency of sizing of my dots. Okay. We're just going to keep going. And then after this row, we're going to add in some petals. Sometimes you can get enough paint on the tool that you do a couple of dots, especially when you get down close like this. But more often than not, you got to dip and dot and dip and dot. Because these are still small enough, I can get enough paint on the tool that I don't have to dip each time, and then I can just wipe off the tool. So we'll skip over to this one. And then hopefully by the time I'm done these purple ones, I can go back into that orange and fix that up. Then I'll do the purple above the orange over there where it's drying. And then I can come back over here and fix up this spot here that is still drying. So this is a great spot, like again, to practice. And you're going to see a lot of dot mandala artists that actually do a fairly small piece with the petals or swoops or anything, and do a ton of these concentric circles over and over again on some large pieces. And it's always breathtaking to see. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the orange, and I'm going to fill in this space over here that's basically dry, or it's close enough to dry anyway, for me. I'm also impatient, so sometimes I will go in and do things a little bit prematurely, but once the paint is mostly dry, it's okay. It's usually all right. It still might not work the best, but that's okay. We'll get it. There we go. And the more you practice it, the better this is going to get, okay? You're most welcome, Jen. I'm glad that it was helpful. You stay warm too. Take care of yourself, please. I have a big problem with doing teeny tiny dots. I look at some artists' work and, like you suggested, and I will probably try some different types of patterns that use less teeny tiny dots on the concentric circles and use them for only accents. And that is totally good too. Again, you have to enjoy it, right? If you don't enjoy the process, you're not going to want to do it. Right? When I first tried swoops, I hated them. I absolutely hated them with a passion. So I never did them. You know, now that I have a different technique that I find that I use, or I've just kind of come to terms with them and I've gotten more comfortable with them, now I do them a lot more. Right? And same with the teeny tiny dots. You got to practice it. And if you don't enjoy it, the practice is going to be really, really, really tough to get through. So don't force yourself. Once it's warm enough for me to paint, yeah. Stay warm first, then deal with the painting, right? Okay, so now I'm going to go to the blue, and I'm going to start creating a spot where we can start doing some petals. So I'm going to choose a slightly larger size, and this time, let's see, which one am I going to use? Yeah, I'm going to use the 6. So this time, I'm not worrying about getting it into the dips at all in those center dots, or like I was out here where, again, they're in the dips. This time, I'm just going with north. I just want to put a dot on the north. I want to put a dot, spin it around, do north again. Then I'm going to spin it, do it again. Oh, my stomach just growled. I hope the camera didn't pick that up. I have a hard time with the small ones. It's really tough. It's really, really tough. And it takes time before you get to that comfort level. Now, because I'm waiting for this to dry, I have these ones. So I'm going to just put one in the middle of each of these two. And then another one here. Perfect. And now I can come over here, I can spin it around, and because I have this bit of a guideline, I'm going to go and put this one here. And that one should be just dry enough that I think I can get in there with the purple and finish off that purple row so that we can keep going with the blue here. So it's a lot of jumping back and forth, and that's okay. It's gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. And just get comfy with it. If you can get comfy with it and know that it's just part of what you do, and then you'll find you beat yourself up a little bit less when you make quote unquote mistakes, right? It's fixable. Even if I have to paint over half of the painting, it's still fixable. So now I'm gonna go here and we'll finish off this one. And then this one. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do some petals on these ones, okay? So I'm going to grab my teal because I'm just alternating colors. So I started with teal, pink, orange, purple, blue, and I'm just going to repeat that over and over and over again. I'm in Pennsylvania. We're getting the freezing rain Texas got a few days ago. Oh, yuck. I hope you're home and warm too, Paula. Now, I am going to do some smaller dots again. I'm not going to go super, super tiny, but I am going to use the small one of my nail dotting tools. So my nail dotting tools have a bunch of different sizes. So for example, I've got this one that's basically just a 1 millimeter, very similar to the other tools. And then these ones are a little bit larger and larger still. When you buy a set of these dotting tools, you'll get multiple sizes in there. Working on a heart for Valentine's Day. Nice. Ooh, fun, Paula. Oh, I can't wait to see what you do with the red background. I need to get this Facebook group up and running so that we can start sharing stuff. If you want to, of course. There's never any pressure to. But oh my goodness, that red is going to be pretty. What color is your design going to be? Okay, let's talk about petals. The first thing that I do when I'm doing a petal is I put the point dot on first. So again, I dot straight across from me, and I do that point dot, the one that's going to be the point of the petal. And I just keep spinning it around and dotting straight across from me. Again, I could do this dot down here, but I find that I always lean slightly to one side if I do that. So I find I get much straighter lines when I dot across from me. So we're going to put all the point dots on. And there we go. So now we're going to start walking dots, okay? Nice. And that's fun too, eh? Just waiting and see what hits you. No, this is not a wooden circle. This is actually a canvas circle. Like, you know those canvas panels you can get? Almost like cake boards? That's what these are. So let's get in nice and close and we're going to talk walking dots. Okay. I don't have it written down, but I will put lots of posts up, Renee, to let you know. I will try to remember, but I don't have a pen to write down your information to keep it handy for tagging you when I get that up and running. But I promise I'll put up lots and lots of posts on my page. Okay, so the difference is instead of doing a dot and then dip and dot and dip, dot and dip, this time I'm going to dip once and I'm going to carry that paint down in multiple dots, and the dots are going to get progressively smaller and smaller and smaller as we go. Okay. Now, depending on the size of the dot that you are going around, And again, the canvas is a little rough. Depending on the size of the dot in the middle, like however big my blue dot was, that is going to impact how far the paint can go, right? I can't always carry that much paint around a big dot with just one dip of the tool. So if that's ever the case, you can dip once, dot just beside your point dot, dip once again, dot on the other side of your point dot, and you can keep repeating this all the way around until you get to a distance where you have enough paint to carry you down to the bottom. You can even change the size of your tool if you want to. Like if you're starting with a larger dot for the point, then you can slowly make those side dots. So these ones on the side here, like I could dot here and here with a completely different size tool if I wanted to. And then help them carry all the way down. You're going to hear a lot of dotters say not to touch your tool to the surface. I've never had an issue with that, but I think it would depend on the paint consistency, whether it's going to make it dry or bubbly or anything like that. Hi, Balbeer, how are you? It's so good to see you. So this is a small enough dot that I only have to dip the once, and I've got enough paint to carry it all the way around. Don't be too hard on yourself if the sides look different. Like if when you go down this side, it's different than going down this side. I count a lot too. So when I'm doing this alone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I count it. And then I count on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They don't have to look completely identical. Okay. Let's see if I can get this up here a little. Oh, that's good to know, Shauna. Thank you. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on that one. And that's okay if it's different than the last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it's uneven on both sides, then I've either done something with my dot size or my peak dot was not perfectly centered, right? That's really strange, Renee. Can you know what, Renee, can you shoot me a message on Facebook? Because then I'll have your username in my inbox, and then I will definitely shoot you a message once that Facebook group is up. Can you do that for me, if you don't mind? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If that's not too much trouble, I think that would help me out immensely, because we don't want to rely on my memory. Oh, thank you, Sharon. Yeah, if you want to make sure that you get tagged when that Facebook group is started, then yeah, shoot me a message. That helps a lot. You're the best, Sharon. Thank you. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. So walking dots is something you want to get comfortable with. One of the other things that I recommend too is having a test canvas, not only for, checking colors and all of that sort of stuff, but to just practice on. I've got an old test canvas here. I'll just move this out of the way. It's just an old dirty canvas that I can go and paint over in black anytime I want to. And then I can sit here and I can practice. And I can kind of get an idea of, so about how many dots can I get out of this? 6, 7, 8, 9. That's when I kind of tend to lose it, right? And then I can try out my different size tools. So this one's a slightly larger tool, and I can see how it's different. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So what I can do too is I can do this dot, then I can do another dot with the same tool, and then I could switch to my other one, and then go here, and then do it again. See how that extends the length of the line that I can do just by switching tools partway in the middle. I hope that helps. Yes, cardstock is great to practice on because it's so nice and smooth, right? That can make it really, really nice. But remember that too, that every surface is going to be different. You know, wood is going to behave differently and absorb the paint differently than canvas is going to, compared to glass or ceramic, for example. With these mugs, the paint just glides on those mugs so beautifully that swoops are so much easier on them than it would be on canvas. However, the paint spreads very differently as well. So to get a particular size dot, I might use a size 5 on a canvas, but I might have to use a size 3 on a ceramic mug because the paint just naturally spreads a little bit differently. I hope that makes sense anyway. Okay, so I'm going to do another row of walking dots. I'm going to go with a slightly larger tool, and we're going to finish off the petal here. So these petals are definitely something that's good to practice because these are going to become a big part of most dot mandala paintings anyway. You see them in a lot of them, and doing the walking dots, you can really have a lot of fun with them. Like I could create, so for example, let's try this on this one. I'm still going to put my peak dot up there. I'm going to take all my other paints off of my Lazy Susan. That was not a good idea to put them there. So I'm going to keep doing these peak dots. Oops, I had something stuck in my paint there. I had this realization the other day that I should put in all of my posts on my website that chances are you are going to have some kind of animal fur in your painting. It is just a given. There's too many cats and dogs in this house, and then we got the donkeys and the horses out in the barn, and we're always covered with it. So chances are there's going to be some kind of animal fur in anything that you order from me. All right, so we could keep going and we could do those same dots all the way around and create a second layer. But what I could also do is I could start here. And I could walk my dots out this way. So remember that. Since I can do this any way I want to, how do I want to do it? Let me get closer for that. So see how it started at the bottom instead of starting at the peak. All right, so let's do that again. So I'm going to do that here. Cool, right? You can go in whatever order you want to. You can make it look however you want to. Always remember, there are no rules. You can do this any way you want to do it. Yeah, the challenge is getting to know your paints and your tools on all the different surfaces. That's why it's so important to practice, right? Paint consistency also, yes, totally impacts the size of your dots. If you've got a more watery paint, then it's going to be a larger dot, or it has the potential to not be a nice round dot, because if it's not thick enough, if it's super watery, then it's almost like the dot isn't being held together by the paint very well. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, or you might get a ladybug in that. I don't know if you guys saw that. Did you see Buggate on TikTok? I had a ladybug walk through one of my videos, and TikTok lost their ever-loving minds. It's quite entertaining. So one of the tutorials that I am going to do, actually let's take a quick pause because this is going to be something that I am going to do, is we're going to talk about doing dot mandalas on cutout wood shapes, because I have this maple leaf that I want to do, and I also have a ladybug. I'm so excited to do the ladybug, and I'm going to do mugs with ladybug patterns on them too now. Oh, I'm glad that helped, Shauna. So let's keep going here. I know that the glare isn't showing the color very well, and I apologize for that. I hope you're able to still see enough of it for it to be useful. There we go. So yeah, you can do this any way you want to, right? You don't even have to do them all the same. You could do every other one like this, and then do every other one from the top down. You can mix it up however you want to. If you're anything like me, you're going to get ideas while you're in the middle of one project and then have to put it into play to see how it looks and then start all over again. I do that a lot. That's one of the reasons why I will start a lot of different projects sometimes, because I'll get an idea. I'm like, ooh, I just need to see if it works. And I'll just get something started to see what happens. I'm glad you're doing good, Belbeer. I'm doing good, thank you. I am doing really good. Tonight, if you guys are around and you're looking for something to do, I am doing a joint live on Instagram tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with my friend Molly, who is also a dot artist. Her Instagram handle is Molrocks, MOLROCKS. We're going to be both painting a 4-inch stone, and we're going to use the same colors, and then we're just going to talk through our designs and what we're going to do next. And it's going to be on her page though, so you have to go to Molrocks, MOLROCKS, to find that live, and that one's going to be on Instagram. But we're going to sit and hang out for an hour or so and do some painting together and see what we come up with. She's an incredibly talented dot artist though. She's doing beautiful, beautiful work. I would highly recommend checking out her stuff. And she's just hands down one of the sweetest people ever. So I'm excited to get to spend some time with her tonight too. That'll be fun. And there we go. So that one went from the bottom to the top. You can do it any way you want to, right? So now let's talk swoops. I'm going to add a couple of swoops in here. So next after the pink is my orange in my levels here. So let's talk about a couple different ways that you can do swoops. And I'm actually going to grab my test canvas for this to show you a couple different ways. So move that out of the way. So we have this. Now there's a couple different ways we can do this. I am going to grab a different tool though. Where did I put it? Is it stuck? No, I must have put it back in my, there we go. I did put it back in my jar. How unusual that I put things back where they're supposed to be. All right, so first option is you really load up your tool with lots of paint. I tend to use the rounded ones, the dotting tools, the nail dotting tools, but you can use any that you want. You let lots of that paint get onto your surface, so don't rush the process to get it off of your tool. And then, now I have a pencil that has a pin stuck in the end of it, and then I can use that to pull that paint down into a nice swoop. This is how I started doing swoops. Now I started with a toothpick. Toothpick will work as well. The reason I found that this pin ended up working better for me is that I had a little bit more precision. I could get a slightly more pointed end, and toothpicks are wood, so they're going to absorb some of that paint, right? And as the tool absorbs some paint, it's going to get a little stickier. It's going to be a little squishier, and it's not going to give you the precision. I also have what's called a micro dotter. It's another clay sculpting tool. I'll show it to you. It's this one here. It's got this metal end on it. And I could use this one to pull it down. And this is all about just pulling the paint, right? And it's kind of nice because then I can create the type of swoop that I want. So I can smooth out those edges, or if I wanted to, let's do another one here. You can create different shapes with them, right? Like I could go over here, and instead of pulling from the center, I could pull from the side, right? And get a curve to it. I could use a really large dot. Get lots of paint on there. And I could pull this down the middle, and I could leave it like that. I could just smooth out just those top edges. I don't have to smooth it all the way to the bottom. If I wanted to, I could make them even bigger, right? Like I could take a really big dotting tool, like this one, make a really big dot. And I could, again, pull it down the middle. I could leave it like that if I wanted to. I could just smooth off this corner and keep it up here and keep a nice long tail on it. You can kind of play around with it. Play around with how you want to move that paint around. So that's if you're using something to pull the paint down, okay? Now the other option, depending on the surface that you're working on and again on the consistency of your paints, there is the option to do it a little bit faster. This was a game changer for me when I saw this. So I'm going to load up my tool again, and I'm going to hold the tool there. Let some paint really come off of there. And then I'm slowly going to pull this down and make a swoop like that. If I go faster, if I just put this down and go faster, see how it kind of gets all clumpy, right? This is on canvas again too, remember, right? Like if I do that, and then I end up scratching my surface. So you want to go super, super slow. I seem to have gotten the technique of pulling the paint with a fitting tool. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So you can go here and then just really, really slowly pull it down. Now this is going to travel differently depending on the surface you're working on again. So working on stone compared to wood, especially compared to ceramic, it's going to travel very, very, very differently. Okay, working on a matte, like some of my mugs are matte ceramic, some of them are gloss ceramic. They function very, very differently. So you want to kind of figure out what is going to give you the shape that you want and how fast do you need to go through, and is the surface that you're working on really going to be the best surface to do that drag technique, but it's optional, okay? With a fitting tool, I knew you meant the dotting tool. That's okay, Paula. Now, one of the things that we haven't talked about on this tutorial, and we can always talk about it if we have time and if you want to, we can talk about top dots. So adding detail. So for example, I've got these swoops here. There's a few different ways you could add detail and top dots to your swoops if you wanted to. So I can go in with a smaller tool and I can just create another swoop, right? I can go in with this dotting tool, put some paint down, and then go in and use my pencil, my pin, and pull that down. And one of the other things that I used to do that I always really liked the look of is just taking it and doing some walking dots. Like that. That was the wrong size tool for that. Let's try another one. So starting here, right? And creating that kind of look. Or you can just create the dot on the end. So have some fun with the top dots as well. Don't feel like you have to leave your swoops alone. You can add top dots, top swoops, however you want to call it, to your top dots too. And that can be a really, really fun way to add some color and to create that kind of glow in the dark effect that you see on a lot of people's paintings. I think it's Christine Anne. Or Christine Ann. I'll have to get the proper spelling. This is the other reason why I want to have a Facebook group, because I can share other content to it for you and show you different people to follow. She does a lot of incredible work with top dots, and she creates these beautiful, almost glow in the dark looking pieces. And it's incredibly inspiring to see what she does. But let's get back to this one and let's add some swoops in. So in my mind, what I want to do is I want to start with a swoop that starts up here and I want to pull it down, because then I'd like to create a couple more swoops here in the middle and make it a few different colors. So I'm starting with the orange first, and I'm going to go in. And because this is canvas, I know that for me, canvas is going to work better. And again, everybody's different. If you can get the dragging with with the dotting tool, more power to you. I'm going to go in and I'm going to use my pencil, the pin on the end of my pencil, and pull the paint down. So I'm going to start it here. Now, when I first started doing swoops, I was tempted to go and put all of the dots and then go around and pull. Try not to do that because your paint is going to dry faster than you're going to get to it. And by the time you get to them, you might get a couple done that way, but by the time you get to the end, you're going to have a lot of gumminess that you're going to have to deal with around the edges of that first dot that you laid down. And it's probably going to be more frustrating than you'd like it to be. So fight the urge to lay down those dots all at once. Do them one at a time. At least that's my recommendation. That's what I've found. I'm sure that's going to impact the different, depending on the paints. Now, because this one is not pulling, I find I'm not doing a great job pulling a nice smooth line over there. So I'm just going to spin this around. And I'm just going to smooth out this side from this way, from this direction. And you can always add more paint to it too, right? Like I can grab a little extra paint and push that in there. And then we're going to keep going around. All right, here we go. Next one. So you're putting a good chunk of paint down, right? That's why you want to leave your tool there for a little bit so a lot of paint can flow down off of it and onto your surface. I don't want to take a lot of the paint with me. I want to leave it there on the surface. Do you ever plan out your designs or do you just go for it? 99% of the times I just go for it. Sometimes I'll plan out colors. Sometimes I'll say, ooh, I want to do a whole piece that's all swoops. But that's usually as far as I'll go. Then I just kind of wing it. I don't tend to do a lot of planning. I did a tutorial a couple of weeks ago, and I actually called it Winging It, where I actually walk you through kind of how I make my decisions when I'm going through and creating something without a plan. And I don't know about everybody else, but I thought that was a really great tutorial. I was really happy about that one. So if you ever want to access any of my previous tutorials, they're available individually on my website. But I also have a Patreon membership where you can, it's basically a monthly membership where you get access to all of the tutorial recordings. And the whole library that goes back to. And there is a tutorial on there that I haven't released on my website yet as well. And that tutorial is actually, where did I put it? I'll show you what that tutorial was. It was a really fun one too. Well, maybe I can't find it. Oh yeah, there it is. The very first tutorial I ever did was on I think it's a 5x7 or 4x6, and it's a magnet, and I did a grayscale. So this tutorial is available in my Patreon. At some point, I will put this on my website as well. It's a 4 to 5 hour video, I believe, for this one. But I love this one. So pretty. But yeah, if you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to reach out, okay? I like to just go for it though. Like I said, most times I will maybe pick out some colors, but that'll be just about as far as I go typically. Yeah, I love that grayscale. Maybe that's another tutorial idea that we should do too, is how to do grayscale and how to mix that up. Because grayscale is a lot of fun. And that's the other thing too, is any of these patterns that you're doing, you could go and if you only went out and bought one color of paint and white paint, you could create a really beautiful dimensional piece just by having different shades of that one main color and create a really, really cool piece, because that's all I did with the grayscale. I started with black paint and just added different amounts of white to it, and that created my colors. And if you go with a good 5 or 6 different shades, you will have a really, really good, a good chunk to choose from and to kind of work through the piece. It's your fave, Barb? I love that one. It was a fun one. We'll do another grayscale again soon. Jerry Lynn, who is Firechild on TikTok and Instagram. She's a glassblower, but she's also a dot artist. She does some beautiful grayscale work with just little punches of color. So like gray with just some little punches of dark teal or red or oranges. She does some beautiful grayscale work. If you want to check out some other ideas for grayscale, I definitely recommend checking out her profile. Firechild with an E. Let's see here. How's everybody doing? Does anybody else have any questions? We doing all right? Ooh, she did a purple one too. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, we'll have to do color grades again. We'll do another tutorial on color grades because they're so much fun. They're really so much fun. And you don't just have to go with colors from a light version to a dark version. You can have, you know, blues going to greens. You can have oranges going to reds. You can make any color grade you want with any two colors just by mixing different quantities of those two colors together. I love color grades. They're so much fun. I use the same concept of the color grades with the multiple different shades of one color for my top dots. So for example, on this heart here, see how the top dots are actually for 3 different colors of pink, and then I use the white pearl on top. So that's what kind of creates that really cool 3D look, and almost a glow-in-the-dark kind of effect. Oh, thank you, Missy. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that this is helpful, and you're most welcome. I get so much joy from doing this that it's just so fun to me that other people want to know how to do it. I love that. And if it can give you even a fraction of the joy that it gives me, then that's success in my mind. This art form has almost very literally saved my life. It's so meditative, and the most therapeutic times to do this are when you can sit down for a couple of hours and just slide away into it all, right? Let time run away with you. It's very, very rewarding. I'll throw on some music, or I'll throw on an Abraham Hicks video and just listen to that. Different things that put me in a good mindset, because, you know, when I'm in a good mindset and I'm doing this, the ideas just start coming. And that's really fun to me. The other thing I am going to kind of plug here with you guys, my coloring pages. I do some drawn mandalas, some digitally drawn mandalas. I've got some coloring pages on my website. The banner on my website, I haven't changed it yet because I have to get out my actual laptop. I can't change it on my app. But the coloring pages, you can get a 5-pack of coloring pages for $1. And I think there's 12 different 5-packs on my website. So if you like to color, or if you know somebody who likes to color, then definitely take a look at that. There's even some in my adult language section of my website. So if you like mandalas with swear words, they're there too. And you get 5 downloadable coloring pages for $1. I've actually made the decision that I am going to start putting any money that I make from those coloring pages in a separate account. And that's the account that I'm going to use to save up for my tiny house. So if you happen to know anybody who likes coloring, or if you know some kids are at home looking for things to do, share, if you feel called to, share my website with them. Oh, I'm so glad, Shauna. Yay, Zen. That makes me so happy. I'm so glad. So I'm going to do another swoop here, but this time notice that I'm not putting my swoop right up at that same line. Okay, you totally could though. Maybe we should try that. Let's look at that. Let's do a comparison and see. So this one I'm going to pull from the right side because I want to create a really nice line here. And then I'm just going to pull this one straight. And there we go. That's hard to see, isn't it, with that color? So let's try one where it's up at that line, though, and see how that looks. Oops, dog hair in my paint. All right, here we go. So if I did want another dot up here, that's still where that guideline is. Oh, shoot. Well, at least it didn't land on the painting when I dropped my tool there. And I can do the same and pull this down here. So you can make them even with a guideline that you have going around, or you can slowly lower them and create almost like another petal. My favorite adult pages, yay! I'm so glad you like them. I made a new sticker and it's a mandala, but the center dot, instead of being just a center dot, has a middle finger in it. And it's one of my favorite things I've ever made. Like, still have a little bit of an edge. That's me. That's just who I am. I think there's a quote out there somewhere that says, peace, love, and a little go F yourself. That one always spoke to me quite a bit. But they're all just outlets for the creativity, right? Create what you like. Create for you. Create because you enjoy it. Yeah, we're starting an animal sanctuary here on the farm. I'm living on my friend's farm, and we're starting an animal sanctuary, and the goal is to have a tiny house here on the property where I'll be living instead of living in the house with them. Yeah, so just working towards that goal. And I figured the coloring pages is a good place to start. And I hate asking people for money when there's nothing to give in return. I thought the coloring pages are a perfect way to do that. You have $1 and you're called and moved to support me. That's wonderful, and I love it. And yeah, so I figured those are a good option. Certainly never ever required, never ever ever. Please know that these are just all options. I am happy you are here, whether you ever spend a penny in my shop or not. I am just glad that you guys are here. All right. My frustration and anxiety are going up. We're having an ice storm, which caused a leak in the kitchen. Oh no! Which caused the door to swell shut. The dogs. Oh, Sharon, I'm so sorry. Are you home alone today? Is there anyone you can call for some help? Is there any other door that you can go through, or are you stuck with the one door? Oh, I'm so sorry. Sending you so much love. I totally understand your anxiety going up. It's so hard when it's things you can't control. So hard when it's things we can't control. Right. Well, at least it's an option to get them outside if you have to. I know you'd have to do leashes and all of that stuff, but at least it's an option. Not ideal, though. I get it. There is the positive of canvas, though, that you get that lovely scraping sound when you're doing swoops, right? Little ASMR. I hope this has been helpful, you guys. I hope that it's given you some ideas on stuff that you want to try for yourself. If you have any questions at all, please make sure you let me know. I'm just zened right out myself in here. Oh, Sharon, I'm so sorry. So here's an example of a potential mistake that I could be stressed out about, but I'm not, because I can go in and fix it after. So this swoop that I did that was in line with the top swoop, I can leave it until it dries, or I can pull the paint off and do it again. And until then, until it dries, I think I'm just going to wait and paint over it when it dries. Until then, I'm just going to keep going, because I can always come back to it once it dries and fix it after. I could fix it now if I wanted to too, but I I don't feel like it. I feel like just continuing to paint. So that's what I'm going to do for now. There we go. And you can change the size of your tools as well, right? You can use one size for the center swoop. You can use different sizes for these side swoops. Play around with it. Again, there's no rules. Zero rules. Okay, so remember that you can do it any way that you want to. No rules. So I kind of treat these clumps of swoops almost as other petals, right? They're just petals that are constructed a little bit differently. So when I go to continue on with my design, these are just other petals that I'm going to work around. So I could have either done a second row with more of these ones with the center dot and the walking dots, or the petals just work very similarly to create the same kind of idea, right? So there's that. You're now practicing swoops. Fantastic. It's fun, isn't it? I used to get really frustrated with swoops because they were a little bit more time consuming. But I also know what they can really add to a piece. I find that I feel very strange if I do a piece that doesn't have swoops on it. It feels odd to me, but I still do it, right? And then you have the option of doing an entire piece of nothing but swoops if you wanted to. That's an option too, right? I love living in a house with other people. That's my mantra. I say that to myself every day. I love living in a house with other people. It's hard to get used to, right? I lived by myself for 12 years. Now, being around people, it's a very different animal. Very, very different. All right, so now I'm going to go to the blue, and we're going to do another thing of swoops, but I'm going to change the size of my tool this time. I'm going to do a smaller swoop in here to get them in there in the side. So I'm going to put this one right about here. It's nice to kind of have this other petal as reference because I don't want to move this one over so far that it's going to compete with the other one on the other side when I fill those in. And there we go. I know it's hard with the glare. I apologize, you guys. I didn't pick nice bright colors for this particular section. I should have done ones that were a little easier to see. The other thing I find when I'm doing swoops, I do clean off the tool after every single swoop. So I'm constantly folding and refolding my wet face cloth to find a clean spot where I can wipe the tool off again. So just keep that in mind, that you'll fill up your cloth that you're using to clean a lot quicker when you're doing swoops if you're cleaning off the tool more often. The reason I do is not necessarily because of the changing of the shapes and the sizes, like the reason for cleaning is with the dots. It's more because if I let it sit there, if I get stuck on a swoop or if I have to fix something, then it's a bigger chance of that paint drying off, and I really don't want it to start to congeal on the tool. Breathe and release, yes. Well, the dogs are seeing something. They've got a lot to say out there. All right, see how that's kind of coming together? It's very satisfying. So I'm going to skip over this one because I'm going to be redoing this particular purple one, but I will do the one on the other side over here. Oops. What is happening? All right, let me give this a stir. I need to give my paint a stir. And I'm holding my tool in my mouth. That's why I'm talking weird. Sorry. All right, there we go. Had some clumps. There we go. Got that fixed. All right. That's better. Once I'm done these blue swoops, I'm going to show you how to build on this side of these circles to create some more petals, building on the other side of one of these circles. If you want a really big wide band of these circles, I highly recommend just doing them all at once. Like if I had started out here and then worked my way in, that would create a really nice big wide band, or start here and work my way out. But because they're not necessarily lined up with each other, I want to create a band of petals in here to kind of break that up a little bit. And again, don't be afraid to try stuff, right? If you try something and it doesn't work out the way you want it to, that's totally okay. Test and tweak as you go for what's going to give you the effect that you want to have. Okay. Like if you get the urge to say, I've been pulling this down with the pen or something else, and now I have the urge to try and do a dragging swoop, I can do that. Right? If it doesn't turn out the way I like it, I can wipe it off and start over. Right? Sometimes when it gets to smaller ones with less paint, that can work out really well if you don't have a huge distance to go. But even then, you want to make sure you're cleaning off your tool on a regular basis, because otherwise it's going to build up and you're not going to get the consistency or the distance that you want to get, or the shape that you want to get. But this one's going fairly short, so I'm going to speed up the process by doing some of the swoops where I'm just dragging the dotting tool. These are incredibly satisfying to do, dragging the dotting tool down on stone, on wood, and on ceramic. It's really canvas where I tend to have my frustration, because it's just an uneven surface, right? So once I'm done this one, I'm gonna back up the camera a bit, and we're going to get ready to build a row of petals around that large blue circle. So because after the blue I go with the teal, I'm gonna grab my teal paint. Hey Ish, how you doing, love? It's good to see ya. All right, so now we are going to do build up for some petals. Now, in here, when I did these blue ones, I didn't care about where the dips were in between those purple dots, right? I wasn't worrying about those for spacing at all. I was just lining them up. I can do that again if I want to, and I think I will. I think I will do it this way, but I'm going to do it on the opposite so they're lined up with the swoops. So I'm going to grab a significantly larger tool though, and we're going to do, so I'm going to put them right here. Now I could come in here and just do like every fourth one in this space like that. Or I can go here and say, I don't care what's happening in this space below. I'm just going to line them up with the guideline, right? Try them both, see how you like it, and see if which one is going to give you the effect that you want. Now, because I did that, I'm going to wipe this off. All right, wipe this off. Wipe this off. And then I'm going to grab my paintbrush and I'll paint back over that in black, and then we'll come back to it. All right, let's see here. It was a long night. Oh, I hope today is better. I hope you're okay. I'm working on a nice drawing paper with metal dotting tools and Artist Loft acrylic. My dots form peaks. That is the paint. Yes, that is the thickness of the paint. So if you want to have fewer peaks and have them be a little bit smoother, then you want to add some pouring medium. You can try watering it down, just adding a couple drops of water, and literally just go drop by drop. I have these little bottles that have water in them, and I literally add 1 drop at a time to see if that changes the consistency, but that might change the opaqueness as well, right? It might make them a little bit transparent or translucent. So you want to be careful with that, whereas pouring medium typically doesn't have that kind of an impact on your paints, but that is because of the thickness of your paints, Shauna, 100%. 100%. All right, so now I'm gonna go and keep going with these teal dots. So again, there's different ways you can line them up. You can line them up with your guidelines. You can line them up based on your design here and how you want them to alternate, or you can go with the spaces that are created and these little dips that are created from the row of dots previous. Okay, I hope that makes sense. But then I can create a nice big row of petals here. Ish, did you know that Molly and I are doing a joint live on Instagram tonight? Yeah, same with the pouring medium. Just a couple of drops at a time. You don't want to add too much. Really good point, Paula. Thank you. So tonight on Instagram with Molrocks, MOLROCKS, I'll be going live with her at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. I'm also going to be, I'm not going live anywhere tomorrow, but then I will be putting up my live schedule for the rest of the week. I go live 4 times a week on TikTok. If you want to come and just hang, it's not like this. It's not a full tutorial. It's just kind of, I'm painting. Want to come hang with me? That kind of thing. So it's completely up to you if you want to come and join us, but we'd love to see ya and come hang out and paint together, or just come and hang out and chit chat. Custom mug order slots. Some opened up today on the website. I have no idea what's left right now. I haven't looked at it in a couple of hours. And what else? The coloring pages are there for $1. Previous tutorials are on my website or as part of my Patreon. What else? I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't know what. All right. Yeah, it's going to be an hour tonight at 7. Yeah, just for an hour. I think Instagram kicks us off when it's more than an hour. But I'm planning on just an hour. All right, so now I'm gonna do pink, and we'll do another row of walking dots. So even out here, I will start the same way I did the other ones. I start with the peak dot first, and I go around and do the peak dot. And these guidelines are always nice to let you know if your symmetry is, if you find you're staying pretty close to your guidelines, it's a really good indication to let you know that you've done a good job with your symmetry. And same with the round ones. Is everything reaching out to the edge of the canvas in symmetry too, right? So even if you're not following the guidelines as far as the pattern is concerned, it's still nice to have just kind of an idea of how you're doing with your spacing. So this is going to be an example of where I do a little bit of a modified bunch of walking dots here. So if I just use this tool, I'm probably not going to have enough paint to get all the way down to the bottom, right? So let's try it. 1. It really gets low and I don't see a lot of great dots there. So what I'm going to do to help modify that is I'm going to do a dot here, and then I'm going to dip again, and then I'm going to start walking my dots. Just gives me a little more distance with a little bit more paint. They don't really look a lot different, but it's when you get up nice and close, I don't know if you can see that. These ones over here are still nice round dots. These ones over here are kind of scratchy and off off, not quite circular, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, or the words. So I'm going to do a dot there, dip, and then I'm going to go and start walking the dots now. There we go. And do it again. So you don't have to carry that paint from the very top all the way down to the bottom. Use your tools to help yourself create those paths down to the bottom without running out of paint. I hope that makes sense, you guys. And it also depends on the thickness of your paint, the runniness of your paint. With more runny paints, you're probably going to get more distance out of them, right? Whereas the thick paints aren't going to necessarily flow off your tools as well. With thin paints, you need to leave more space in between your dots than you do the thicker paints, because the thinner paints are going to run together a little bit easier. So there's all kinds of things to take into consideration based on the consistency of your paint. And they can all be the same brand. Do not assume that because they're the same brand that they're going to give you the same consistency, okay? Always test it out and see how it is. And make sure you don't cut any corners when it comes to shaking and mixing your paints. Give your bottles a really, really, really good shake to make sure that they're really good and mixed up. Because one of the mediums that's in acrylic paints to mix it up is very watery and almost chemically. And if that's not mixed in there well, then your paints are not going to have a great consistency. Metallics, I find, are the ones that are really impacted by that. And typically what you're going to find is red paints. For some reason, I find they're all fairly watery. Silver paints for craft acrylics. I haven't found a nice silver paint that's super thick. However, I did get some Folk Art multi-surface silver paint. Sorry, that's really, really close. And it's really nice. So you can always mix that up. You don't have to save your multi-surface for painting on ceramic. You can use it on canvas with your regular multi-surface, with your regular craft acrylics as well. And it's actually a really nice consistency for a silver. Silvers I've found to be very classically very watery. But the multi-surface is really, really nice. So maybe that's an option too. But really test out your paints and know that just because it's the same brand does not mean that you're going to get consistency the same between colors. Apple barrel paints, if you're using apple barrel paints, they tend to be watery. They still have some really great colors that I don't typically see in some of the other brands, but they're so watery that they're almost not worth it, because you're just not going to get nice consistency in your dots with that. There we go. And one more. Now the thing with doing them this way, these new dots here, is that I've got quite a bit of space in between. So I have room here to make really big petals. So as I add more and more rows onto these petals, more and more rows of these walking dots onto these petals, I'm going to be covering a larger and larger distance. Like I can add another one here and add all these peaks. I could go all the way up to here, but then I've got a really long distance to go. And that's where I'm really going to have to take advantage of placing the dots and not starting to walk the dots until I've made it down a little bit further around the sides here. I hope that makes sense anyway. Does anybody have any questions? So that's where we're at so far. I'm still going to add some more in here, probably another row of either petals here and then another row of swoops maybe. I'll add some more detail in there, but this piece is definitely starting to come along. Do you guys have any questions or anything you'd like me to go over before we sign off for today? If you're a member of my Patreon, the recording of this tutorial will be on my Patreon no later than end of day on Monday. And it will also be available on my website by end of day on Monday as well. Any past tutorials are available on my website, or again, the Patreon membership will let you access the entire library of anything that I've done up until this point and anything new that I do going forward. The links for the Patreon and for my website are in my bio, both here and on Instagram and on TikTok as well, too. I used to have a link tree on TikTok, but I kept hearing people tell me that they were getting a warning saying that it was being redirecting them to an unsafe site. So I took the link tree off, but both of those links are on my TikTok as well. I'll be going live 4 times next week on TikTok. I will post my schedule on Sunday to let you know when I'm going to be going live. And of course, next Saturday we'll be back here from 1 to 3. Eva, do you bake the stones or just leave to dry? So after I've painted them, I just use regular craft acrylic paints on the stones. So the only time I have to bake something is when I'm doing the ceramic. So you can just let that dry. This was so awesome. I'm so relaxed and hooked on this artwork. Yay! I'm just so glad that you're enjoying it, Shauna. That makes me so, so happy. If you have any questions at all, you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. I will do my absolute best to help you. I just hope you have something that you enjoy doing or enjoy watching. I'll keep sharing everything that's going on. I'll let you know when that Facebook group is created. I will remember to tag Renee. You're most welcome, Eva. Oh, one of the great varnishes, I like matte varnishes. I'm a super sucker for matte finish. And let me tell you, the matte Mod Podge, holy crap, this stuff is amazing. Absolutely amazing for a varnish. So I'm using the matte Mod Podge. I'm excited to try the gloss too for like, but look at that matte finish. Like there's no reflection on that compared to, like, see how this one's a gloss finish? It's reflecting a lot of light compared to that just absorbs all the light. Absolutely amazing. Highly recommend the Mod Podge for a finish. I'm even going to try it on my mugs because they have a dishwasher safe Mod Podge, and I really want to try it and see if that can just add a little bit more protection to my mugs, but I'll keep you posted. I wanted to thank everyone for all the love and positive energy. My nephew is still in critical condition, so please keep those thoughts coming. We're sending you so, so much love, Rex. Sending you so much love. Stay strong, and we will send you and your family all kinds of love in the world. Oh, Kiara, how are you? Oh, you missed it. I'm sorry. But I'll be back again, same time, same bat time, same bat channel next Saturday. And I'll be going live a few times this week on TikTok. And if you want to catch any of the past tutorials, you can jump on the website and they're individually there, or you can become a member of the Patreon. And there's the whole library is accessed in there. But I'm glad you were able to pop in and say hi, at least to Kiara. Thank you. Rex, we're sending you so much love. I wish that we were there to be able to give you a great big hug. But just know that you're loved. Please stay safe. Oh, and Renee's going to light a candle. That's wonderful. Renee, that's so kind. Oh, my God, I love you guys. You guys are just so full of love, and I'm so grateful to know every single one of you. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful couple of hours this afternoon. I'm sending you all lots of love. Please take care of yourselves. Please stay safe. Please stay warm. And I will see you again really, really soon. Thank you for spending the time with me today, you guys. I will talk to you again very soon. Lots of love. Bye. Love you too, Rex. Bye, Paula. Bye, Sharon. Bye, Barb. Bye, Renee. It's like reading Rainbow. I need to look through my mirror. All right. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Take care.